All right, welcome. This is Jason. I'm with the Patriot Trading Group. Joe has been on vacation here recently, and then I had a little bit of a sideways day or two yesterday and Wednesday, so we just ran some repeat shows. You know, you can't control everything. Everything can't be exactly the way you want it, but I am here. I'm ready to do some radio. We're going to talk a little bit about gold and silver. I'm going to talk a little bit about central banking history. I really want to retouch on the American history. If you see it through central banking, it's a little different history than what we learned in the books growing up at school. You know, you have an idea of what you think things are and how things are, and then you look at how events throughout our history are shaped on financially who's in control. It gives you actually a more stronger understanding as to why things happen the way they do. So I'm going to do that. I got my compatriot here, Brian, on the air with me. Brian, are you there?
Good morning. Yep, I'm here.
I don't know how to disconnect one of your guys. I'm going to mute one end. Just try that again.
Is this me?
There you go. Yeah. You're on there twice, and then you sound like Megatron when they both come in.
Well, we don't want Megatron because that sounds too much like Omicron.
That's exactly right. So, yeah, we had some snow here in Colorado, so I got Jack out there shoveling for me while I take control in the control room here. But, Brian, it's been quite the opening to 2022. We finally got snow coming in. Arizona sounds much more like a place I'd rather be than Colorado with the snow we've gotten.
Yeah, Mother Nature trying to catch up for no moisture for 3 months.
I don't know if this is what we're going to be looking at for the next 3 months. I hope not, because I can't deal with this much snow. It's not even a ton of snow. It's just, I don't know. It's just like as soon as you're like getting over the one snow, then we got another layer comes in, and I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's Colorado. We'll eventually get through it.
And you add single digits to that, and just adds to the experience. I'm hearing an echo. Throwing me off.
Oh, let me... Okay, maybe that'll fix it. Just to let you know, the office in Arizona, their internet is out. I don't think that'll affect the customers all that much. Kind of affects our side of it. The number to call for gold and silver is 800-951-0592. And some things going on. Joe's going to come in on Monday and just start yelling and screaming about how crazy things are going to get. Let me take a look here because the Dow has been suffering, and there's a reason for that. Yes, there's been downward pressure on the markets, the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the Dow. Gold and silver had a big down day yesterday. Let me check, because I think it was flat today. Let me take a look, which is a good thing. Any day that gold is flat right now is actually a good thing, and I'll explain this before we get into it. I got gold up $4, and I got silver almost exactly flat. It's down 2 cents. The Fed minutes were released on Wednesday, and they basically, many of the Fed, the chiefs of those, the 12 Fed heads, they want to sell assets. So they're tapering. We're tapering right now. With the tapering, they're going to stop buying by March, and then they're going to start raising interest rates. They say 3 times in 2022, 3 times in 2023, and 2 times in 2024. So the lowest that the interest rates will be in 2024 will be 2%. This is obviously to try to get a hold of inflation, but I think when they start raising interest rates, which could be March, they are going to start selling their balance sheet, which has gone close to $9 trillion. The markets have immediately started selling off. It's why gold was sold off a little bit yesterday. You may see days where gold and silver goes down, but the other markets are really going down. Bitcoin went down. The stock market is down 2-3%. The stock market can't handle the balance sheet of the Fed going down and interest rates going up. and not purchasing more stuff, and the 0% interest rates and the addiction to this free money, it's coming to an end. So no matter what gold does, it goes down a little bit, goes up a little bit, whatever it does, you are really on the cusp of not getting in when it's really, really cheap. The number to call is 877-488-1360. If you want to jump in on some gold and silver. Brian, you and I, we've done quite a few shows over the last 4 years or so, and we've covered the whole, central bankers. They've even when they didn't have a central bank, they kind of float around the scene. They're always testing, testing all the weak points of America and trying to get their bank put into place. And then in 1913, they got it. Just a bunch of leeches, blood-sucking leeches that just suck the time and effort and money out of the citizenry, Brian, and they produce nothing.
Never-ending probe attack to figure out where things are, when to make their moves.
Absolutely. So when we get back from the first break, I'm going to talk about American history through central bankers, through central banking. We're going to talk about how we had these colonies over here, and they were wanting freedom from England and Europe, and what did we end up with? How do we get there? And what did we end up with? And it's interesting history. We're going to talk a little bit about that when we get back. Stay tuned. This is the Patriot Trading News Hour right here on 1360 KHNC and on KXXT in Arizona. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, Patriot Radio News Hour. Your co-host Jason Bryan filling in for the man. He'll be back Monday. Worry not. But yay, we made it to Friday, the 7th of January, 2022. Never a dull moment.
Just going to try to make it through my 4 hours of radio, Brian. That's how I'm going to make it. I'm going to push through this whole thing. I do feel a lot better today. So I'm, it's one of those things. You're getting sick or getting a little bit off a little bit, and then it's like the whole world is coming to an end. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's the biggest game of cooties in human history. And if you have a sniffle or you have low energy or body aches or a fever, and suddenly you're like this ostracized, leper that needs to be taken out of society, Brian. But
I remember almost not quite 2 years ago that one of the jokes was that allergies is going to turn into the Salem witch trials.
Oh my gosh! Boy, does that sound like the truth? Yeah, boy. Mm-hmm. All right, well. We have this thing called the Federal Reserve Bank. It really is the scourge of the earth. It is the main source of slavery to modern day Americans. And all the other countries that are industrialized, almost all of them have their own central banks that work with ours. It's a big club, and we ain't in it. So Brian and I are gonna go over some history. Is the people of European countries in England, they were sick and tired of not having religious freedoms, not having economic freedoms. They were working for the king, doing everything that the king wanted, and suddenly this new world was found. And wow, look at this empty country. Of course, there was Indians there, but I mean, basically, this vast land of opportunity. But you have to go to this untamed wilderness, and you have to work hard to make it civilized, right, Brian? You have to do the necessary things to make this new land become a civilization. So, what ended up happening?
Very dangerous. Freedom can be dangerous. That's for darn sure.
Freedom comes with risk. Safety comes with slavery. I mean, that's basically what it is. So, the Bank of England was the controlling arm of England, and there was the Rothschilds had banks in all of these these European nations, and this was a big problem for them because suddenly people were going to go there and potentially become their own rich banker types and be out from the control of them. So this was a problem. So as the colonies developed, the bankers loved stealing the assets of the colonies. If you were a colony, you had a successful business, a farm, a mine, or something. The taxes and the financial grip of the central bank of England made it look like the King of England, King George, was the great evil. Well, the King George didn't make decisions. It was the Bank of England that made decisions. And if the Bank of England wanted the riches brought to them, they would make it happen. And so the colonists putting all this work and time and effort into building this new nation, it was being stolen from them. So that's why you ended up with the Revolutionary War, the War for Independence. And after so-called winning the war, which you could say maybe we didn't win the war because there was debt. There was this new country with debt. We had the new Constitution. There was immediately a central bank put into place. Alexander Hamilton stopped Thomas Jefferson from having an amendment to the Constitution, taking from the new government the power to borrow money. Alexander Hamilton made sure that was not put into the Constitution. And now you still have this possibility, if they can get their central bank, that they can start stealing from the citizens. So, Brian, in 1791, the first central bank, just a couple of years after the Constitution was ratified, you have a 20-year charter for a central bank, and immediately the problem they already had with England and the European nations, they already created upon themselves, Brian.
You have the central bank like a serpent just waiting in the grass, waiting for their opportunity, for their moment.
So what ended up happening is near the end of this 20-year charter, the new colonies, the new United States of America, the states were just disgusted with this central bank. Even the newspapers at the time, which weren't completely controlled by the bankers, were on the side of the people in the states. So the end of the 20-year charter is 1811. And by one single vote in Congress, because the bankers wanted to renew the charter, well, by one vote they decided to decline the central bank. I don't think we really need you. We're going to try it ourselves. The Rothschild bankers in England said, look, you must renew our charter or there will be war. If you ever wondered why it's the War of 1812 and not the War of 1809 or the War of 1814, the reason it's the War of 1812 is because in 1811 we got rid of their central bank. And now England decided to come attack. I mean, if England wanted their colonies back, they could have attacked us, Brian, in like 1805, right? They could have attacked us in 1810, right? No, they attacked us in 1812, didn't they?
Yep.
1811 is when we got rid of their bank. So what ends up happening with the War of 1812 is by the end of that war, there was now war debt. So America so-called, just like the War for Independence, we so-called beat the British again in the War of 1812, a war in which we won almost no battles. It's interesting how you win a war when you almost win no battles. But at the end of that war, we had massive war debt. So guess what the federal government decided to do? They got the second bank of the United States. They did another central bank in 1816, a 20-year charter. Isn't it interesting that these wars so far early in our history are all focused around central banks and money?
Well, but the way the history books tell it, it's all about the kinetic, the actual physical war, as opposed to the financial war that's waged. That's rarely given any attention.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, well, now we got this second bank of the United States, and now they're really going to do their best to really take advantage this time around, and we start moving towards the end of that charter, and now there's more economic strife and problems. And you have the election of Andrew Jackson in 1828. Andrew Jackson ran on a platform that he was going to get rid of the central bank, and that it was a scourge to, it was a blood-sucking leech to the United States of America, and that this bank and its all of its holders, it's a private company. Remember, these central banks are private companies. It's not a part of the federal government. and through his 2 terms as president, fought what they called the banking war. You know, the war of the banking war of the 1820s and 30s. And Andrew Jackson eventually wins this war. He takes all the funds out, and I mean, he had to go through 3 Treasury secretaries to get this Treasury secretary that would do what he wanted, which is to pull all of the deposits out of the Second Bank of the United States and put them in state banks, and eliminate the Second Bank of the United States. Now, on top of this, his re-election year, 1832, he was going to. He was going to run on the fact that he was this close, and we're this close to, winning our country back. Re-elect me, and I'll get rid of the bank. And the bankers thought there's no way that he can win this election off that platform. We'll pass an early renewal of the bank, and when he there's no way he'll veto it. There's no way that the political pressure of this that he'll deny us. So in 1832, before the election, right around the time of Independence Day, July 4th, the Congress and the Senate both pass a early renewal charter of the Second Bank of the United States. They put it on Andrew Jackson's desk, and he vetoes it. Then he wins re-election in a landslide, gets rid of the bank. Also, the first president to have an assassination attempt against him after doing so. Brian, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I just want to add one part to the private owned central bank. Added insult to injury that it's foreign private owned, as if private owned wasn't bad enough. But I digress. No,
that's exactly right. Even the Federal Reserve has foreign owners of our money system. People don't know this. There is definitely foreign ownership of all these private central banks. All the Bank of China. Do you think it's just Chinese that own that central bank? No. Mm-hmm. Plenty of Europeans and Americans and other countries' central banks that own pieces of all these other central banks. So what you got then is Andrew Jackson. They tried to kill him. They were so upset at him. The guy that went to kill him had 2 one-shot pistols, and both of them misfired. It was determined afterwards that both of those pistols were in full working order. So very interesting about that. So now there's no central bank. Well, between 1836, 1836 and up to about the Civil War, about a 25-year period of time, America had one of its most economically fruitful times in its history. America was economically just the jewel of the world. Businesses were sprouting up everywhere. The resources were unlimited in America. It was, what Andrew Jackson had started, and Martin Van Buren continued with his term as president, using a gold and silver money system. It was just doing great. But the bank,
I like Jason. I like how Ron Paul used to stand in front of the Capitol and point back and say that was built without taxes. That was built on tariffs and not taxing, which was not constitutional.
And that is correct. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one thing about Andrew Jackson I didn't really put in there, which is Andrew Jackson, after taking the deposits out of the Second Bank of the United States and getting rid of it, had surpluses coming in, and he was the only president ever to pay off the national debt. No president has ever done it. Andrew Jackson paid off the national debt, and he only had 2 terms in office. Brian, can you imagine any situation where if a president was trying to pay it off, he'd get it paid off in 1 term? I mean, it can be done, depending on what you do, but I don't see any president's never going to do that.
No, it's become such a foreign concept. It's been so normalized, especially in the world of politics, this whole debt system.
So there you go. That was Andrew Jackson. Really freed the nation. And then, of course, you have the Civil War. All you need to know about the Civil War is that the English and the French were wanting to come back in and get a piece of this. They wanted to take possession of the United States again. And they were starting to build armies in Canada and in Mexico, and they sort of stirred the pot. Everyone thinks, well, it's a war for, the South the South didn't like the industrial North, and they wanted to keep more money that was theirs for all their cotton and all of their assets that they were producing, and it was about slavery. Well, believe it or not, it was really mostly just about money. It was mostly about central banking. A great and destructive civil war, the bankers knew, would, just as we heard before, the War for Independence and the War of 1812, they knew that a big destructive war, civil war, would bring them right back to a central bank. But then they ran into Abraham Lincoln, like him or not like him. What do you hear what he did?
Welcome back. Second half, Patriot Radio News Hour on this Friday. Thanks for joining us. Boss Man will be back on the Monday. The moon day, that is, good Lord willing. Jason, it's, never mind. Well, it's National Bobblehead Day. What that has to do with anything, I have no idea. It has nothing to do with anything.
Wow. National Bobblehead Day. Boy, someone's trying to sell bobbleheads, I guess.
Yeah, the bobblehead lobby.
All right, well, when we left off, we were getting to the Civil War, okay? You'll have to excuse me, my voice is a little off from my my excursions from the what are they calling it now? The Influrona, whatever. Is that what they're calling this thing now, Brian? The Influrona?
Flurona. Yeah.
Well, whatever it is,
AKA need more vitamin D.
Yeah, that's what I've been taking, lots of vitamin D. So, anyways, but yeah, so my voice is a little hoarse right now, and it's not bad, but it's got that little itch back there, Brian, from
pickle.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Civil War is going to start. Abraham Lincoln's elected, and here comes the war, and he's just trying to figure out, what am I going to do now, because of England and France positioning themselves closely, knowing that there might be some hawks that might want to swoop in and take over as soon as the North and the South start shooting at each other. He went to the banks of the United States, and he's like, look, I need money to keep this country together, because if we allow the South to secede, the South will break into petty states, and then will be recolonized, and that will not be good for us, because all that will be left is the northern United States, which will be very easy to recolonize. So he decided, and it was kind of non-constitutional when he decided to keep the states together, but that's a whole other argument. What we're trying to focus on is why the central banks, how deeply involved were they in this war. And when Abraham Lincoln went to the banks of America, which were in the pockets of the Bank of England, central bank, they're like, hey, Abe, yeah, we'll give you the loans you need, 37% interest. So Abraham Lincoln went home from those meetings depressed, thinking, what am I going to do? And his Secretary of Treasury is like, well, there was this thing that Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, some of these guys in Pennsylvania, they had this colonial scrip when England was just raping them of all their assets and their money. They came out with this fiat currency, paper currency, that was controlled by Pennsylvania. The history books will tell you that it was a colossal failure. It was a resounding success. And you might say, well, that's a fiat currency, that can't work. Well, a fiat currency can work. Money can be pretty much anything. It's just who controls the quantity.
Yep.
And what happened was England brought a bunch of counterfeit scrip in these ships, and they flooded the market with counterfeit Pennsylvania scrip and destroyed the currency's value. So Abraham Lincoln
can't let those colonists get too big-headed now, can't do that?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So Abraham Lincoln's like, okay, well, so what? Okay, so we'll make the greenback. Okay, all my troops and do the business of keeping this country together, and our guys will be paid. They'll be able to eat. Well, in a war of attrition, we should be able to beat the South with this system, and they did. The North won because Their troops were well supplied, well fed. The South had just the same kind of assets. The South wasn't quite as organized, but the end of the war was America being one country, and Abraham Lincoln came up for re-election at the very end of the war. Now, Abraham Lincoln was not, there was an assassination attempt on him right when he was elected. That failed. And now we're in times of war, so obviously Abraham Lincoln was, I'm sure, more well protected because he became a target constantly from the South. But when he is assassinated, it's right after he's reelected. They didn't kill him before he was reelected. They killed him right after he was reelected. The bankers knew that if Abraham Lincoln were to continue to print the greenback, it was going to be a resounding success, and it was going to show the rest of the world that central bankers are not necessary, that the creation of money should come from the country, and the country doesn't need to tax anybody, income tax. They don't need to have a central bank, which is making you borrow the money at interest. You simply print the money you need. And this is actually a great way to do it because, Brian, if the government that's currently in charge prints too much money and creates inflation, the voters can then vote those people out and get more fiscally conservative, smart legislators to shrink the money supply down. And even though, a lot of politicians are greedy and they would want more money, we don't have that ability today. We can't just vote out the fiscally irresponsible Congress people and senators because they just reshuffle the deck with their guys. The central bank owns all of them. Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. They're all bought and paid for because the central bank has bought everything. If you have no central bank, Brian, the federal government can create the money itself and be in control of its own destiny. We don't have that anymore, Brian.
No, and that very direct accountability. I mean, you could say you want to talk about something that's a rare thing, that accountability that we no longer seem to have, or at least it's been trained out of us. It's been educated out of us very, very efficiently. Precisely.
So Abraham Lincoln is assassinated. It's Booth. John Wilkes Booth. Well, John Wilkes Booth was through an organization, and you trace it back. It ends. The powers that be made sure that guy went and did that job. So the Civil War did not go the way that the bankers wanted it to go. They still did not have their central bank. So now you got the 1860s, you go into the 1870s. Now you have a lot of economic strife going on because they're putting a lot of pressure on. The bankers are now trying to corner the gold market because it's like, well, if we can't have the central bank, then we'll corner the most important part, which is the gold, which can then they can pull the gold out of the market and create depressions. And then you end up with an election in 1880. The election of 1880, it was Ulysses Grant was coming in, and he wanted to be elected. He wanted to be elected for a third time. He ran and won 2 terms. He was a disastrous president. He was a central banker-backed president, which meant his economic policies made us worse and worse and worse during those 8 years. Ulysses Grant then in 1876 decided to retire and go see the world and go into retirement. Well, by 1880, we want Ulysses Grant to run for president again because, man, the bankers sure like a clown like that just does what he's told. Well, an interesting thing happened at the Republican convention. Central bankers, man, they just won't stop. Brian, we'll be right back.
Welcome back. Thanks for rolling with us on a Friday. Your co-host Jason and Brian standing in today, covering a little banking history. Jason.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine the frustration of these central bankers from the late 1700s when they had a couple of small charters, 20-year charters that got upended. Really, I mean, do they want control of the economy? Man, these pesky Americans just won't give them what they want, right? And very frustrating for them. We get to the year 1880, and Ulysses Grant is, a guy that does a good job for the guys that get him elected. And he was the overwhelming favorite to win the Republican nomination, become a third-term president. What happened was there was 4 candidates that were being voted on. William Tecumseh Sherman's brother was running, and I mean, I can't get the names of the guys off the top of my head, but there was 4 of them. And as the each of these candidates had like a speaker, a speech for them, and this guy James Garfield was speaking for Sherman's brother. He did a speech at the convention, and the speech was so good about what America needed to do, how it needed to be freed from the control of bankers and a poorly run economic government, that he wanted to go back to the days of Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Jackson, how that's what we need to do. And the speech was so resounding that the first couple of votes for the Republican candidate, you have to get more than 50%, and General Grant couldn't get it. And so they kept voting. It went to about 37 votes, I think, if I'm correct. But they started, 10 votes in, 15 votes in. Suddenly, there started to be votes for James Garfield, who was not running for president. And this is an interesting thing about your Republican and Democrat parties, is that you don't even have to run to be voted in. At that convention, your Republican and Democrat parties can just choose whoever they want. So they ended up choosing James Garfield. Boy, did the bankers not want that. Because as soon as he became president, it's like, okay, we're going to go back to the days of Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Jackson. Well, a couple months into his term, pow, 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 he's shot, and he languishes in a bed. Here's the funny thing about James Garfield, Brian. The doctor that was taking care of him was very foolish. He probably, if he would have left James Garfield alone, he probably would have lived, because he lived for months after that in a hospital bed. But the doctor kept opening him up and looking at the wound and doing all this weird stuff, and he didn't wash his hands. Germs weren't as known about as they were in the decades to come, but they were known about it at that level. He just didn't. He basically, it's a lot of conspiracy theories are that that doctor was given full control of James Garfield so that he would actually poison and kill him, because it took months for James Garfield to actually die from that gunshot wound, Brian.
It sounds similar to how George Washington has reportedly died. He got sick riding around, got wet on his horse, bled him out regularly, gave him mercury.
Yep. Oops. Yep. So, yeah, we had a anti-banker president, James Garfield. Only lasted 5 months. Bang, 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 dead. The election of 1896, we had William Jennings Bryan running as a silver candidate versus William McKinley, who was the gold candidate. Well, the bankers got behind William McKinley because they had a vast control over gold at the time. It was a good way to control the economy without their central bank. William Jennings Bryan would have been an absolute, stunningly great president, but he lost to William McKinley by a little bit. And William McKinley was reelected in 1900, and I think he wanted to free gold too much, and so bang, 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 William McKinley was taken out. William McKinley is a little bit like John F. Kennedy. Once he became the president and started learning about how things actually worked, tried to fix things the way you're supposed to, and they couldn't. The bankers couldn't have that, Brian.
Well, it's interesting because I go back trying to remember the history that I learned from public education, and that there was very little of the motive behind these various things with presidents and wars. Definitely was not in the books that I was taught from.
Yeah, they don't really tell you who was actually to benefit from these assassinations, right? They don't really tell you who benefits from this. Nope. Intentions and who benefits, or K. Bono, that's right. And you have you have William McKinley, who was assassinated. He was reelected in 1900. So now you're getting into the bankers after the Civil War for a good 40 years were really pushing hard to create a situation where the people of America would almost beg for the bank, or they would just let their politicians decide for them. So in 1907, J.P. Morgan was the hero. The bankers were able to crash the stock market and create economic stress that was massive. And then they said, well, we just need smart banker types that can stop this from happening. I'm J.P. Morgan, and I'm a rich guy, and I'm doing well, and I'm going to use a bunch of my fortune to save this country, but you guys need to come up with a better way. We need to have someone in charge of this. Isn't that nice, Brian? J.P. Morgan saying, you guys, I'm this great hero. You know, I helped this group of guys, crash the economy, the markets. But we need to come up with something, Brian. We need to come up with something that'll fix these problems. That was J.P. Morgan's message, Brian.
How convenient. Never mind the adage of to whom much is given, much is required, much is expected. I guess he maybe glossed over that. That's
exactly right. So in 1910, you have the Jekyll Island meetings, the secret meeting of the bankers, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the J.P. Morgans, and all the other big families. And they decided how they were going to put their bank into place. And when you listen to the next few years, how rapidly they put their power into place, no 20-year charter. They knew that that in the next generation, next 20 to 30 years, everything had to go right for them to permanently control this country through a central bank. We'll finish the show off with that. Everybody stay tuned.
Welcome back. Final segment, Patriot Radio News Hour. I nor Jason are not Joe. and I don't know if we have a special today or not, Jason.
No special. Ben, we're going to have a special on Monday, I'm sure. But we just buy gold and silver, whether it's on special or not. That's all I have to say. I mean, to me, I always buy it whenever the funds are available. So you can always do that by calling 800-951-0592. Let me finish up this because we only got a couple of minutes here.
Yeah, I'm glad, Jason, with the history part. It just doesn't stick with me for some reason. I can't retain it, so I'm glad it does with you.
Well, yeah, I just I mean, I don't know, I'm really good at once I understand the whys and the motivations of things. I don't know, for whatever reason, it sticks to my brain. But in 1907, you had the crash. In 1910, you had the Jekyll Island meetings where they made their plan. Now, these bankers needed it to go their way and stick. So in 1912, you had the sinking of the Titanic. The three richest men that were anti-central bank died on that ship, a ship that was owned by J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan, who just got off the ship at the last possible stop before it went over the Atlantic and crashed. Hershey was on there, and the Jesuit master of the ship's captain all got off the ship at the last moment, and Captain Smith most likely crashed that ship on purpose. That was the mission. In 1913, through a vote of Congress, they passed the federal income tax law. In the same year, they passed the Federal Reserve Act in the Christmas holiday, and they had their central bank. It was called the Federal Reserve. It sounded like a federal government program. People just didn't really get it. Hey, we got somebody that help us with our money problems in this country. And then it just went from there, Brian, that we've had 108 years now. Is it 109 years of this maddening central bank that just robs and steals from us? I mean, from 1913 to 1920, there was a market crash. Then there was a boom cycle from 20 to 29. Then there was a market crash, and then it re-crashed in 33 as the Depression raged on. They took gold from us at that point, made it illegal. They declared the United States bankrupt. And the Constitution, it really does not exist in the way that it was written originally, and so on and so forth. 1933, after taking the power from us and bankrupting the country, the World War II was being planned so that all industrialized nations on Earth would be destroyed completely, and they would have no way to deny the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England full economic control of the world, Brian, and that's we've just limped on from there. If you're anybody of any years of age, you know that the 1940s, 1950s was probably the height of standard of living in this country. It's from the 60s on, Brian. It's just been slowly the standard of living going down ever since, Brian.
It sure has. I mean, I've seen it in my short lifetime. It's painfully obvious.